Let's get to the reason we're all here tonight. Christian Idiodi. I'm super excited to have him back again to speak at our group. He gave a great talk last time. It's always great to hear him speak. He is a partner at Silicon Valley Product Group, which I'm sure everybody here is familiar with. Before that, he was a product leader at Merrill Corporation, Snag a Job, and CareerBuilder. His Twitter handle's at @CIdiodi. And he's going to give us a talk that I haven't heard before I'm excited about, which is how to set up your product teams for success. So with that, Christian, welcome. Thanks for an awesome talk. It's great. It's a topic you don't hear much about. You and I have been to a lot of conferences and a lot of events and a lot of corporate trainings, and it's not, I'm reflecting now that you don't hear a lot about it. So it's nice to hear about a topic that isn't covered that often.
Yeah, I was kind of very naive to the importance of it, but I think people kept consistently asking me, it's like, why are your product managers so effective so quickly on the team? And I thought everybody was doing something like this. And I said, am I naive to the reality that, did you not spend time? It's like, they are in meetings, they know everything about the company. They already have friends in the company. It's like, what's going on? And I started to realize, we probably really lose out on an opportunity to get people effective because we did not do the work up front.
Yeah. Well, and you start off by saying, which is true, that many leaders delegate hiring and onboarding to HR.
Yes.
And I'm just, how do you think that became the default? Why is that the default at so many companies, do you think?
Well, remember my see, do, teach type of thing here. When I kind of explain to people that your job literally says hiring manager, you should do the hiring. People say, well, we've got people in HR, their job is to write. I say, think about it. Whose team is this? They say, Miss My team. Is the HR person, say, what do you manage? I manage a team of engineers. Is the HR person an engineer? No. Have they ever done engineering? No. Do they know what good engineering looks like? I don't know. But you're asking them to write a description, to do the decision, to do for an engineer. Just think about that. Now, it has become such a common practice. Don't get me wrong. HR, they are experts on understanding tools, system, procedures, processes that should help you in your hiring. But many people just default. They say, HR, send me a job description for an engineer. You know what some people do? They go Google it. The job description. I don't even know what the good engineer looks like. Then interview them. They outsource it, even like reference checks. I get that all the time. It's like, go talk to all their references. How is that person going to know what a good reference for an engineer looks like? Oh, they played in Angular too, and they thought, that sounds good. How do they know? It is so unfair today. And that's constantly, many organizations over time have gotten to this idea that, hiring decisions, recruiting is for a group of people called HR or recruiter. Their job is to enable you, support you in driving it. It's our job to build our team.
Yeah, got it. Cool. And what you recommend sounds great. Makes a lot of sense. Well, if you had to estimate, what percentage of leaders do you think are actually doing this?
Oh boy, this has been a high. I think it's about the same as what percentage of leaders are actually doing good coaching.
I agree.
Yeah, it's an unfortunately low number.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't even beg to.
No, I know. It's lower. It's unfortunately low. That's a good way to put it. So why do you think more leaders don't invest in onboarding?
They've never been onboarded well themselves.
Yes, exactly.
I promise you this, if you find someone that has worked for me before and they are, like I say, a VP of product right now, you will see what they do to onboard their new hire. Because you're like, oh, I can't remember, man, I was so good after I had this or I learned this in a company. And it's hard for them to not do it for someone else. Yeah. You're like, I only filled out paperwork and then I did the job. So I think that's what onboarding is. Right. So we need to coach and train more people on this, on how to set up your teams well.
Yeah. Okay. And I could see a lot of leaders saying, hey, this all sounds great, Christian, but I'm so busy. I'm in meetings. I can't spend this much time on them. I just can't spend this much time. What would you say to them?
Oh, Mike, it's the exact same answer I do for coaching too as well. I talk to CEOs all the time. A CEO say, I don't have time to work on a strategy. And I say, that is literally why you don't have time, because you don't have a strategy. The reason you're so busy as a leader is because you're actually doing the work that your people should be doing. You see? If you taught and trained your people and equipped them to do the job well, then you free up time to actually get, it's an unfortunate cycle that feeds itself. Leaders, in many companies, the best individual contributors are the managers of people, because they actually get promoted into that. Like, oh my goodness, Dan is so good at engineering. Dan, be our VP of engineering.
Right.
And Dan still keeps doing engineering. Dan teaching people how to do engineering.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good segue too. I mean, PMs fall into that, right? PMs all start out as individual contributors, and your reward for doing a great job is great. Now you manage some other people, which is like a completely different job that entails these kind of things that we're talking about, right?
Yes, it's the purest definition. I always tell people, it's like when you're a PM, you're doing product management. When you're a leader of product managers, your job is to get people better at product management. It's a different job description. But in a similar way with onboarding, we have the same problem with promoting people. We often promote people, and then it's like, oh, Dan, you're now a VP. Dan is like, this is great money. I've never been a VP before. I've never hired people or fired people or done those things. But you know what? I cannot ask that question now because everybody will know that I'm incompetent. So, I'm going to use ChatGPT to do my interviews and ask, how do I scream at it? These are real world dynamics. So unfortunately, I tell people, I am not promoting you to learn how to do the job. I am promoting you to do the job. The time for you to learn the job that you're going to do next is while you're in this current job. You see, that's where we practice you doing the VP job.
Well, and that brings up an interesting point, because your point is when you're a new employee, I always say, take advantage of that. You have that grace period. Like, your calendar is not triple booked yet.
That's right.
And you're the new kid on the block. You can go, hey, Christian, you're in sales. Can I just have a coffee with you and learn about sales? Like,
yes.
So when you have a new job, when you're new, you can do that. But now I just realized when you're in a company, you get promoted, you don't get any sabbatical.
That's right.
Field promotion. So you're basically saying you need to learn it beforehand.
Yes.
Okay.
The way I describe it, I say it's the only time you have a right to sit on the bench.
Right. Exactly.
Like, every job is like game time. There's no job like, relax, we are not stressed. That is stressful. Making product work is like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So for leaders who want to do a better job with onboarding, where do you recommend they start? How should they start?
Oh boy. I wish there were like a onboarding school to train how to do onboarding or some kind of program. It's kind of the same problem we have with product management. It's like no singular training curriculum that gets you good at it. The best product people have learned from other product managers. The best onboarding people will have to observe good onboarding to see. I do talk a little about it in the Empowered book we have. I'm going to be writing more about it. I will publish out my exact agenda. I don't like to go into details with it because every company is different. Make your own. But I want you to at least know what I am trying to get out of it. Like, so that you can kind of say, if I'm deliberate and I do this well up front for 2 weeks, man, your life will be easy. I cannot stress this for you. The kind of productivity, the level of trust, the effectiveness of your teams, because you just invested 2 weeks up front. Magical.
I could also see, I'm sure, an increase in employee satisfaction and retention, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the other cultural benefits to it are absolutely magical. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Okay. One thing is, so, a lot of different people try onboarding. In your experience, what things make the ones that the best onboarding experiences? What sets those apart from just the rest of them? What makes an onboarding experience like really, really good, would you say?
The manager. When I ask people, if I ask this question, what's the number one reason people leave a company? Everybody has seen those studies and things. Everybody goes, oh, it's the manager. But if I ask you, what is the number one reason people join a company? Do you think people actually say the manager? People rarely do. No, the vision, the problem, the company is cool and so. But I'm like, if we know for sure, statistically and fact, that the number one reason they will leave is the manager, why is the manager not part of the reason they join? So the key difference between the best onboarding programs that I have seen and so is the individual manager's time. And like when you have people say, oh no, I didn't join this company alone. I joined to work for Dan. and I joined to learn from Dan. And I'm committed to, and they see Dan's investment in coaching you to be successful. The fact that your manager is setting the tone for what their role is early on, coaching you, helping you get better, setting you up for success. Then, if Dan screams at you in a meeting 3 months after, you're like, Dan is on my side. Go ahead, Dan. But, imagine that surprise when you're like, I'm not really sure why we're having this performance evaluation. You're trying to fire me. It's very weird. That is often the biggest indication when you see people panic, or when they have a one-on-one with your manager and you're like, oh my goodness, you're stressful, But people should be excited. Like, man, I get Dan's time. This is so cool. I'm going to talk about because they know and they have trust that Dan's role is to set me up for success. It's the manager.
Okay, makes sense. Cool. And then I really like your military boot camp analogy. Some people probably know I was actually in the Navy for 5 years during college and stuff. And my first job was working on submarine design. It was actually my first job out of college before I got into product management. So that's my first corporate job.
Yes.
And I didn't realize it till I went to the corporate world that where I worked in the Navy, our unit, everyone just understood our mission, like so clear. They were aligned on it and they knew our ways of working. Yes. And then I went into corporate America, and it wasn't like it was horrible, but like different people didn't know what the mission was or how it's supposed to work. And it just led to a lot of disagreements and inefficiencies. And so I'm just wondering how can leaders help ensure that alignment and on objectives and ways of working? What can they do to make that better?
I mean, to kind of your point here, it doesn't happen by accident or by luck. I mean, it's almost every high performing team has clarity of context. Yeah. Common vision, common goal. I mean, you can pick that in every stuff. Everybody, we're here to win the Super Bowl. Like, nobody's like doubting, like, do we want to win or lose? Like, what are you working on today? It's like, this is what the team is doing. And I think, to your point, if leaders can recognize that part of their responsibility, a big chunk of their goal, is to provide that clarity of context. It's not like, I put the vision on a SharePoint drive. Everybody go read it. Now we have a vision. That is not, there's no organization ever. I mean, you get some places are almost a little cultish. People talk about, well, is that about? I'm like, culture comes from cults in some way. They like repeat their mission every day. You see it in kindergarten. They're all, we pledge allegiance. We sing a national anthem. It reinforces. Nobody's in any doubt as to why you're here. They have all these hoorah things that people think that those things are like just about camaraderie and energy. But you can ask anybody in the Marines or stuff, and they know their motto, their item, the values. Because leadership reinforces and instills it. What you do is who you are. And so if leaders in corporate walls outsource it, like we joked about with HR, like somebody build our mission and post it on a wall, and now everybody should know it. It doesn't work. But if you coach it, if you train it, if you reinforce it, if you live it, if you demonstrate it, if you show it every single day, you build an environment where that sticks.
Yeah, and it makes me think, so if the head of product is expected to do that, then it just goes up like the CEO. It really ends up with the CEO, right?
Yes.
At the top.
Yes.
The accountability of is that happening or not starts at the top, right?
Yes. The CEO, it's kind of in coaching. I was actually coaching a team on a one-on-one. The CEO happened to be in the meeting, and the CEO came off of the coaching, so he was crying. And I said, what's going on here? This is not what I wanted, one-on-one, because we practiced him getting feedback from someone. And he said, I've been, startup CEO. It's like I've been CEO for 15 years. Nobody has ever asked me what I needed. They're like, CEO, give us this. We need this kind of stuff. Nobody actually even created a plan to help me. I've been struggling with this. This person is like 4 layers down from me. And in this practice session, they gave me some really good feedback in some ways. And I told the CEO, I want you to do that for everybody on your executive team. Because after they've seen you do that, they will take that and do that for all of their employees who will hopefully take that. That's how companies scale. You don't scale with process, you scale with people. So if the CEO is spending the time to coach all of his directs on a vision or strategy, hopefully they can ask their questions and they will coach other people on doing that too as well. right?
Well, it sounds like the top mistake is not doing onboarding, but for people that are trying to do onboarding, what are some of the top mistakes you've seen people make so they can hopefully avoid them?
Well, I mean, we talked about the manager. It's outsourcing the onboarding, giving the responsibility of getting somebody on your team good to somebody else that is not on your team or doesn't know your team. I know it sounds crazy, but we do it all the time.
Sure.
The second piece, I kind of call that out, thinking that onboarding starts on the first day when they join the company. Some people call it pre-boarding or stuff like that, but you've got to start onboarding prior. I mean, there are so many things you can do to prepare somebody for your organization. And philosophically, like I said, I am not expecting you to be here to learn all the job. I'm expecting you to do the job. In short, the organization is like, I thought you just hired Dan. Okay, so check the box, deliver next week. The roadmap should be done now. I mean, have you seen that in a company where like you have hired a new engineer, now we can make the date? I'm like, the guy has never ever worked here before. Whoever trained him? So people start to expect results the second you staff up a team. So, you got to do the work prior hand to prepare the person, all of your reading, all of your things to prepare them for that. Third, please do not feel like you have to do this alone. People work in a team and they work in an environment with other people. I all of my onboarding session, the entire executive teams know it. I mean, salespeople come and take my onboarding class. It is that cool and fun for people and stuff. And I rotate like that where I go speak at the sales onboarding. The sales leader comes and speaks at my onboarding. You see what we share. So they can help create relationships, dynamics. My favorite technique is actually having a new hire shadow the most influential person in the company. It's a very powerful emotional intelligence black belt technique that gets that person really ramped up very quickly, but shares the accountability of their onboarding with that stakeholder. So some of the kind of most common things I see people struggle with onboarding.
Nice. And I saw you had the Bill Campbell quote there. I was fortunate. I worked it into it when Bill was still there, and so I got to interact with him a lot. And you mentioned it once, but I just want to circle back on it. So, onboarding is a specific, what you've recommended is a specific thing at the beginning of someone's tenure to set them up for success. And then beyond that, there's coaching. And again, I think a lot of what you said, like a lot of leaders aren't coaching or spending as much time coaching as they are. So I'm just wondering if you had to try to convince leaders out there, they're like, I want to coach, but I'm just so busy. I'm so busy. What advice would you have for them?
I mean, I want us to probably truly reflect on that, on why we're busy. And I kind of called this out before. And I said, unfortunately, most leaders are doing the job. Meaning, think about it. You're in every meeting, making every decision, making every priority, dealing with tough decisions, managing conflict, intervening, removing obstacles, removing barriers. That's your life every day. But you start to hold yourself accountable to the output. We need to deliver this by Monday. So you're going to jump in and try to do that. The thing that creates scale is not that Colleen is great, but that Colleen can create 5 other Colleens. Are you seeing? That is kind of the magic of the best companies in the world. That's how they scale. So when I challenge people on coaching and onboarding, I say, just imagine what your life would be if there were people in your team that were more competent at making a decision than you are, at tackling conflict than you are, of dealing with it, of presenting better than you are. People say, well, there's a big piece around insecurity that I want people to always come to terms with. An insecure manager, you will see the achievements of your team as getting in your way of your own recognition. You're like, oh, the team is getting all the praise. I want to get the best praise you can get as a manager. Is that Dan, who started as a PM today, is a VP tomorrow. That is your job. Your job is not, we launched 20 products last week. I know it feels painful because the product people get the clapping, people celebrate the launch, and you're like, well, I don't feel people see me in there. The job has changed. People do not even read. Promotions have the worst job description ever. I don't know who has ever read a promotion job description. You literally take the title and that's it. It's like, I was a director, now I'm a VP. Did you read what the VP is? No, that's for the LinkedIn post. That's for other people. I know it. I'm seeing it in here. But your job has actually really changed. You're no longer responsible for outputs. You're responsible for equipping people to go get outputs. The best thing you can do is to get them competent. That's how you get results. So when I challenge people on coaching, I'm saying, Bill Campbell's kind of quote to Dan's point, your job is to create an environment where teams thrive. Many people think all these companies like Google or Netflix, they hire rock stars. I have worked, there is nobody I've met at those companies that are any better than anybody I've met at other companies. What they have that is different is the environment in which they do their work. You show me a company that is excelling at good product work, I will show you a product team that is great at this. Product teams are made up of individuals. Those people are coached.
Yeah.
That's the magic.
Great. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much. It's been great chatting with you on this. Let's switch. We have questions from the audience. So let's switch over. Mark Cohen.
First of all, thanks, Christian. Always inspiring. Love your stuff. It is fantastic. I'm curious, just give me the short version of how you acquired your interesting leadership perspectives and skills aside from real world experience.
Yeah. I don't know if you probably had Matty Kagan talk about my story in some ways. I actually went to boarding school in Africa as a young kid, and I didn't know how impactful that would be on my life and my leadership style. But I went to a gifted program where we had people that spoke different languages from different backgrounds and cultures all around coming in, and we were kind of thrown in the middle of kind of what you consider a jungle, no potable water, no power in some ways. And we kind of self-organized ourselves in some ways and learned how to survive and cope and deal with stressors and problems. I think it accelerated, I was there since I was 12 or something. It accelerated my problem-solving ability. It accelerated my ability to understand the dynamics of people. I learned languages and nuances and cultures and backgrounds and the roles that they played in here. So I think there's some part of that actually impacted my construct of how people work too as well. I think my parents were very, very good coaches in some ways, and they probably spent their life. I come from a family of teachers, math teachers and school teachers and stuff like that. And so I probably got a lot of influence on getting people better as a child and watching people get people better. And I have not seen anything magical than when you see somebody that is the president today of any country see their elementary school teacher. And the magic that they created because they created a space to answer a question, to help them to get better. Till today, if you want to see something magical, find the most powerful person in the world and find somebody that taught them something. And you see the dynamic of honor and respect that goes back and forth between that, recognizing the impact that person may have had on your life. So I think, you're right. I have gone through a series of experience myself firsthand and failures myself. But I think there is obviously some nature and nurture environments that have helped to accelerate some of that. So great question.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Next up, we have Antonia.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks, Christian. I've been a product person for a number of years. It's the first time that I have a team. I have one person in my team and I'm hiring a second person. And my question is around how those tools and techniques are amazing, but how do you suggest we bring those in the current environment where face-to-face is not what we do 100% of the time, and most of the time what we're doing is this, right? This virtual interaction via video and cameras and so on. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, my preference is that it's the best time to actually get to see someone in person. I mean, I was just with a big bank earlier today, and someone has been working there for 3 years and has never met any of the people that they've been working with in person, has never met their manager in person, and they only see them from the box, and they're top. It's like, wow, my manager has legs. I didn't know that. I've never seen their legs before. This is awkward. It's kind of one of those. When I say when you get a chance to practice, most things interpersonal skills and stuff, or non-verbal communication cues. Or imagine learning all of those things the hard way. What does Antonio mean when he shakes his head? Is that good? Is that bad? I have to wait to another meeting, number 3. These are things that you cannot uncover very quickly. Again, what I'm trying to suggest with this bootcamp is you're trying to accelerate productivity. In today's environment, with the tools we do, if you don't take it seriously, you are lengthening out the amount of time it takes for people to get productive. Because it's just like, I have never met my designer before, my engineer before. We've never all been in a room together. I don't even really know. I have no relationship with them. They're super busy. Many companies that work remotely, that they used to do a lot of, actually been as part of their onboarding program. I think it was it Envision or something, and they do a tour of your home, your new hire. They take their laptop, they introduce their family, and I love it. It sounds very weird and uncomfortable, but it kind of normalizes your environment and your people. It's not weird if your child jumps in the middle of a meeting. Geez, we're all working from home and they're a child. That's perfectly normal. Let's get over it. But you kind of see people uneasy. Oh, well, my background is not super cool. That's okay. Like, we need to talk about, I always advocate like an always on technique for teams, where you get on Zoom and you're present 24/7 or all the time you're working. If you need to leave, I'm going to a meeting and you leave. Like, why? Because in the real world environment, we see people in the office. It's not weird. People say there's Zoom fatigue. The reality is that you get Zoom fatigue from seeing yourself. So what I always say is, you turn off your own camera, but you need to see other people. It's great to know that other people are there, because you don't want the first time to ask Antonio, like, hey, I need help to this, to always be a meeting. You don't need a meeting to be like, hey, did you submit that request yesterday? It's just a simple question, or type up a long email in some ways. Right? So in a remote environment, I tell leaders all the time, I say, look, think about what you're trying to accomplish with some of these onboarding. You want to build trust. You want to build relationships. You want to build clarity around the knowledge. It's not impossible to do remotely. It's just harder. So if you're not willing to do the hard work and focus on doing this, it's like, try to build trust over Zoom versus in person. Antonio, I can take you for drinks. By the end of the night, I will know everything about your family. We'll be good. You see what I mean? That's like 1 hour of investment, leverage return. Over Zoom, we have to go through all of the protocol, So, Tom, you see, I talk, you talk. You see, that's a longer, not impossible, just harder.
Yeah.
You see? So the best teams I know deliberately say, okay, these areas of ramping somebody up are more challenging virtually. What things can we do to improve that? Like, they don't kind of check the box. It's not like, oh, we had a Zoom meeting, they're onboarded. They're like, we know this is going to take longer or take more time. So I have many teams today where I encourage them to onboard a new hire. They do a class like once a month. They bring all the new hires, and then they bring everybody together in person so that they can at least get over the hump of like, I know you, relationship type of stuff. And then they carry on the other onboarding things virtually. So, but some companies don't have the funds to do that. But I'm saying to people, it's not impossible. It's just harder. Design a plan to tackle those. Great question.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Antonio. Okay, next up, we have Kirsten.
First of all, thank you, Christian. This is really helpful. Perfect timing. For me, the question that I had is, I'm kind of in a slightly different situation. I love the framework. If you have any experience or context you can share in situations where you're coming new into a company, and part of the ask of me is to help rebuild an org and start with the people that we have. So we're going to basically do a reboot and likely apply it in a more matrixed approach where they already have product owners, but we don't have anybody that thinks about journeys end to end or personas end to end, any of those. So any thoughts you have on that would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, great. I think I have this idea of like onboarding often means a new hire, but I'm kind of alluding to like onboarding could be a promotion. It could actually be an org change. Kind of have to onboard people. If the way you're working is changing, on how you solve problems is changing, or how you decide which problems to solve is changing, the most effective way to get productivity or effectiveness is to onboard people into this change. So, what you could do in this kind of model here is you have an existing team of people and you're making changes to how you work. There is no rule that says because you've been at a company 34 years, you cannot attend an onboarding class. There's no rule that says you don't have to practice. We don't stop practicing, especially if there are new plays, new techniques, new approaches. So typically what I do philosophically when you're kind of saying, well, I have to drive a change. You can go the long, strenuous way of working on the change over time with a nice, lengthy change management plan or announcements or things like that, and all the releases and documentation in it. Or you can literally call an onboarding bootcamp for the change. It's a real thing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So you can design a framework that says, we are changing to journeys, to this new team structure, to this topology, to this way of working. People say practice. Practice for me is always like training. Training is like start and stop. Kind of what I like when I say practice is like, it's ongoing. So, I'm getting better at something. First, I'm going to show you the play. We're going to practice the play. We're going to get feedback on the play. We're going to do it again. And we can keep doing it again until we really get good at it. So I always coach leaders there's nothing wrong in creating a boot camp to enable people to adopt a change you may be making in an organization. I invite current teams to new hire onboarding because it's the only time they practice. Think about it. They are working on fire drills every year. They love onboarding class existing because it's this is actually fake work. Nobody's really nobody's gonna scream at us if we miss the date on this stuff. And they share their mind and it is really important. Good.
But can I ask one follow-on
Please.
side of that? So in that scenario, obviously our engineering counterparts will play a key part in that success. So any thoughts on getting, I'll say, skeptical engineering leadership to buy into that model?
Yeah, and this is a great opportunity for engineering to lead too as well. And you've got to talk about the outcomes that you have a desire for. One of them is for product teams working well with engineering. And, you can make that front and center as part of your plan. And you want engineering to lead that conversation because this is a real dynamic. Skepticism from engineering for product teams is actually a real common dynamic in many organizations, but we ignore it. It doesn't fix itself by magic. The best way to fix it is to practice an alternative way of working. And so they've got to see it, then they've got to try it before we can even teach it because we now know that it works. So I go to the engineering and I say, we have a problem. We have some mistrust, some skepticism about this stuff. Let's get your input or feedback. Can you now show the team a better way to model this? This is what leaders do. I give an example with conflict management. For instance, if I know a team is dealing with conflict in a big all hands meeting, I'll say, Christian, in the meeting, raise your hand and scream at me and be like, I don't agree with this. This is stupid. Really? In front of everybody in the all hands? I say, yes, because you know what everybody is thinking? What's going to happen now? You see, drama. People need to see what will happen. Christian, why do you feel that way? Tell me, we talk about it. Christian's like, you know what? I'm not really sure I buy into this, but I understand why it's important. So I'm going to get it done. What have I just told everybody? It's okay to disagree, but still commit. I just demonstrated it to people. The only way people know what is acceptable in an environment or culture is what they observe their leaders do. So in kind of that world, if skepticism is a real thing, I don't act like it's only in one side of a bucket. I role play how we tackle it. And I ask the engineering leader to role play with me.
That's great. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Great. Kirsten, thanks for your question. Okay, last question we got here is Carol.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your talk. And my question is really about scale. So I work in a large organization. My group hired 15 people just like in the last year. And then our organization as a whole hired probably about 30 people per month over month. And so I'm curious how you apply these best practices at scale.
Yeah, it's actually best for our scale. The sad part about it in many companies is the reason you're hiring like 50 people is because you could not get productivity out of 20, in some ways. And they're like, we hired 5 and nothing is moving yet. Hire 5 more. We got 10 and nothing, hire 10 more. It's kind of big enterprise brouhaha that happens commonly. We joke about it all the time when you see like some of the best apps being built by teams of 5 people. Or like 4 engineers worked on Spotify. You're like, how did that happen? Kind of stuff. Really, it's about equipping people. You're hiring smart, competent people. So what I do, in big companies, I do an onboarding class, the boot camp. So I work with HR. We can make offers at different times, but everybody starts around the same windows. You see? So everybody can get an offer at different times, like make an offer, whatever. But every start date aligns around an onboarding window. That whole new 30, they come into an onboarding class. Oh, it's fantastic. They are friends for life. We accelerate their productivity. We get big results from them. Sometimes you're like, we don't need to hire more people. I have actually had an onboarding class where we had a plan to hire 50 people. At the end of the onboarding class, I gave them the work of 50 people as part of the practice session. And they nailed it. And we saved 40 hires in a budget because we're like, we really don't need more people. Like, this team can do it. And it was just meant to be a practice kind of round. Like, what if we gave them to work on this? They didn't know. They loved it. They're like, oh, let's try it out. And we saw great results. It's like we thought we needed 3 data people and 4 people, but we had 1 year and 2 years and it worked well. So in some ways, like the whole goal in a big enterprise, this is actually very, very effective the bigger the company. Because, you don't feel like, oh, I'm just onboarding 1 person every month or quarter. You're like a class of 15, a class of 20. That's fantastic. So, it will require more coordination because more managers are making the time to get their employees in and stuff like that. But it actually yields significantly better results at scale.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Carol, for your question. I appreciate it. Christian, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share your advice with us. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Diana, and always fun. Thank you for having me and for hosting this.